Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
John von Neumann, in collaboration with Oscar Morgenstern, presented a profoundly influential work, Theory of Games and Economic Behavior, published in 1944. This seminal text established game theory as a rigorous mathematical discipline, providing a framework for analyzing strategic interactions among rational agents. This essay embarks on a comprehensive critical evaluation of specific arguments presented within this groundbreaking text across its multifaceted sections, paying close attention to the author's claims, methodologies, and overall contributions. Its aim is to illuminate the enduring significance of von Neumann and Morgenstern's ideas and, where appropriate, to address points of contention leveled against the volume's assumptions and conclusions. Section 1: Formulation of the game. The initial sections of Theory of Games and Economic Behavior lay the foundational groundwork by formulating the concept of a game in precise mathematical terms. Von Neumann and Morgenstern assert that a game consists of a set of players, a set of strategies available to each player, and a payoff function that specifies the outcome for each player given the strategies chosen by all players. This formulation, they argue, provides a general framework applicable to a wide range of strategic situations, extending beyond simple parlor games to encompass economic, political, and even social interactions. A key claim within this section concerns the rationality assumption. The authors explicitly assume that players are rational, defined as consistently striving to maximize their expected payoff. This assumption, though crucial for deriving many of the book's results, has been the subject of intense debate. Critics argue that actual human behavior often deviates significantly from perfect rationality, influenced by factors such as emotions, cognitive biases, and incomplete information. The very notion of perfectly defined payoffs ignores that a human player may assign personal value to what many may see as a meaningless outcome. Furthermore, the initial sections introduce the concept of utility, a numerical measure of a player's preferences over different outcomes. The authors argue that it is possible to construct a utility function for each player that accurately reflects his or her preferences, even in situations involving uncertainty. This claim rests on the assumption that players can consistently rank different lotteries, which are probability distributions over possible outcomes. While the utility representation theorem provides theoretical justification for this assumption, practical challenges arise in eliciting accurate utility measurements from real-world decision-makers. Human beings often display preference reversals, where ranking inconsistencies prove that the axiom of rationality is often broken. Section 2: Sum 2. Person games. One of the most significant contributions of Theory of Games and Economic Behavior lies in its analysis of zero-sum two-person games. These games are characterized by the property that one player's gain is exactly equal to the other player's loss. Von Neumann and Morgenstern demonstrate that every such game has a unique solution, known as the minimax solution. This solution guarantees each player the best possible outcome, given the assumption that the other player is also acting rationally to minimize their losses. The minimax theorem, a cornerstone of game theory, provides the mathematical foundation for this result. The theorem asserts that the maximum payoff a player can guarantee themselves, assuming the opponent plays optimally, is equal to the minimum payoff the opponent must allow, again assuming the opponent plays optimally. Establishing this equality required considerable mathematical ingenuity and represented a major achievement. However, the focus on zero-sum games has been criticized for its limited applicability to real-world situations. Many games involve the possibility of mutual gain or mutual loss, and are therefore not zero-sum. Nevertheless, the analysis of zero-sum games provided a valuable starting point for the development of game theory, and the minimax theorem remains a fundamental result with broad implications. Furthermore, it is important to consider that any general-sum game may be trivially turned into a zero-sum game by including a bank as another player and considering the bank's gain or loss as the collective loss or gain of all players in the original game. Section 3N. Person games and coalitions, extending the analysis to in-person games where more than two players are involved, introduces significant complexities. Von Neumann and Morgenstern recognized that in such games, players may form coalitions in order to improve their outcomes. The authors introduce the concept of the characteristic function, which assigns a value to each coalition, representing the total payoff that the coalition can guarantee itself, regardless of the actions of the other player. The authors argue that the characteristic function provides a useful tool for analyzing the stability of different coalition structures. A coalition structure is considered stable if no coalition has an incentive to deviate and form a new coalition. The concept of the core, which consists of all payoff allocations that are stable in this sense, is introduced. This defines a set of solutions that appear to be resistant to destabilization. One limitation of the core concept is that it may be empty in many games. This means that there may be no payoff allocation that is stable against all possible deviations. Von Neumann and Morgenstern propose alternative solution concepts, such as the stable set, which aims to address this issue. The stable set is a set of payoff allocations that are both internally stable. No allocation in the set dominates another allocation in the set, and externally stable every allocation outside the set is dominated by an allocation in. However, the stable set concept has been criticized for its complexity and lack of uniqueness. In many games, there may be multiple stable sets, or no stable set at all. Furthermore, the stable set is often difficult to compute. Even for relatively simple games, mathematicians have constructed games that have no known stable set, even after decades of study. Section 4. The von Neumann-Morgenstern solution. The von Neumann-Morgenstern solution concept, also known as the stable set, is a central element of their theory for cooperative games. It aims to capture the idea of social stability, where no group of players has an incentive to deviate from the proposed allocation of payoffs. The solution concept is defined as a set of payoff vectors that satisfy two key properties: internal stability and external stability. Internal stability means that no payoff vector within the solution set dominates another payoff vector within the set. Domination, in this context, implies that a coalition of players can achieve a higher payoff by deviating from the proposed allocation. External stability means that every payoff vector outside the solution set is dominated by at least one payoff vector within the set. This ensures that any alternative allocation is vulnerable to being overturned by a coalition of players. Von Neumann and Morgenstern argue that the stable set concept provides a compelling framework for analyzing cooperative games. They believe that it captures the essential features of social stability and provides a useful tool for predicting the outcome of strategic interactions. However, the stable set concept has also been the subject of considerable criticism. One major criticism is that it often lacks uniqueness. In many games, there may be multiple stable sets, each representing a different possible outcome. This makes it difficult to predict which stable set will actually emerge in practice. Another criticism is that the stable set can be difficult to compute. Even for relatively simple games, finding all stable sets can be a computationally intensive task. This limits the practical applicability of the concept. Furthermore, some games have no stable set at all, which means that the concept cannot be applied to these games. The ambiguity and computational complexity of the von Neumann-Morgenstern solution led to the development of alternative solution concepts, such as the Shapley value and the core. These concepts offer different perspectives on cooperative game theory and have proven to be more widely applicable in practice. Section 5 Discrimination and Stable Standards of Behavior. Von Neumann and Morgenstern address the concept of discrimination within the context of game theory, a term that does not necessarily carry the negative ethical connotations of modern usage, but rather refers to situations where players are treated differently based on coalition structures or other factors. They posit that stable standards of behavior can emerge in games, reflecting these discriminatory practices. This section delves into how certain players or coalitions might wield disproportionate power, influencing the overall outcome. The authors argue that such power dynamics can be mathematically modeled and analyzed, revealing the underlying forces that drive seemingly unfair or unequal distributions of payoffs. They develop mathematical tools to identify which players are essential to a game, meaning that their participation is crucial for a coalition to achieve its maximum value. The analysis of discrimination and stable standards of behavior highlights the strategic complexities inherent in in-person games. It demonstrates how the formation of coalitions, the distribution of power, and the enforcement of norms can shape the outcome of strategic interactions. However, this section also raises ethical questions about the fairness and equity of game-theoretic solutions. One criticism of this approach is its potential to legitimize existing power structures and discriminatory practices. By focusing on stability and equilibrium, the theory may inadvertently reinforce inequalities, rather than challenging them. Furthermore, the assumption of rationality may overlook the role of emotions, social norms, ethical considerations in shaping behavior. Section 6. General discussion of utility. A crucial aspect of theory of games and economic behavior is the in-depth discussion of utility. Von Neumann and Morgenstern recognized the importance of quantifying players' preferences in order to analyze strategic interactions. They developed a rigorous theory of utility, based on a set of axioms that define rational choice under uncertainty. The authors argue that if a player's preferences satisfy these axioms, then it is possible to construct a utility function that represents those preferences. Furthermore, this utility function is unique up to a positive linear transformation, meaning that it can be scaled and shifted without changing its underlying properties. This allows for meaningful comparisons of utility across different players. The theory of expected utility, maximization, has become a cornerstone of rational choice theory and has been widely applied in economics, finance, and other fields. However, it has also been subject to numerous criticisms. One major criticism is that it relies on the assumption of perfect rationality. In reality, people often deviate from the axioms of rational choice, exhibiting biases and inconsistencies in their preferences. Another criticism is that the theory of expected utility maximization fails to account for the emotional and psychological factors that influence decision-making. People may be risk-averse, meaning that they prefer a certain outcome to a lottery with the same expected value. They may also be influenced by framing effects, where the way a choice is presented affects their preferences. Despite these criticisms, the theory of expected utility maximization remains a valuable tool for analyzing strategic interactions. It provides a framework for understanding how rational players make decisions under uncertainty. Furthermore, it has stimulated a large body of research aimed at developing more realistic models of decision-making that incorporate psychological and emotional. Section 7 Composite Games. The concept of composite games is explored, where smaller games are combined to create larger, more complex strategic interactions. Von Neumann and Morgenstern argue that understanding the structure and properties of composite games is essential for analyzing real-world situations, which often involve multiple layers of strategic decision-making. The authors examine how the solutions of the constituent games can be combined to form solutions for the composite game. They introduce the concept of decomposition, where a composite game can be broken down into its constituent games, allowing for a more manageable analysis. This approach simplifies the analysis of games with complex interdependencies. However, the analysis of composite games also reveals the limitations of game theory. As the complexity of the game increases, it becomes increasingly difficult to find solutions that are both mathematically rigorous and intuitively meaningful. The number of possible strategies and coalition structures can grow exponentially, making it challenging to identify stable or optimal outcomes. Furthermore, the assumption of rationality becomes more problematic in composite games. Players may have limited information about the structure of the game or the strategies of other players. They may also be subject to cognitive biases and emotional influences, making it difficult to make rational decisions. Despite these challenges, the analysis of composite games provides valuable insights into the complexities of strategic interactions. It highlights the importance of understanding the underlying structure of the game and the interdependencies among players. It also suggests that game theory may need to be supplemented with other approaches, such as behavioral economics and cognitive science, to provide a more complete understanding of human behavior in complex strategic environments. Section 8: A simplified poker game. To illustrate the principles of games theory, von Neumann and Morgenstern present a detailed analysis of a simplified variant of poker. This simplified game retains the essential features of poker, such as incomplete information, bluffing, and strategic decision-making. While being mathematically tracked, the authors derive the optimal strategies for each player in the simplified poker game. They show that the optimal strategy involves a mix of bluffing and honest play, with the frequency of bluffing depending on the player's hand and the opponent's betting behavior. This analysis provides a concrete example of how game theory can be used to analyze strategic interactions in real-world settings. However, the simplified poker game also highlights the limitations of game theory. The optimal strategies derived for the simplified game may not be applicable to more complex variants of poker, which involve multiple rounds of betting, more complex hand rankings, and more sophisticated players. Furthermore, the assumption of rationality may not hold in real-world poker games, where players may be influenced by emotions, biases, and other psychological. Despite these limitations, the analysis of the simplified poker game provides valuable insights into the strategic complexities of poker. It demonstrates how game theory can be used to identify optimal strategies and understand the dynamics of bluffing and deception. It also highlights the importance of considering the psychological factors that influence player behavior. Section 9. The main theorem of finite games. The main theorem presented in the work is the minimax theorem, pertaining to two-person zero-sum games, asserting the existence of a unique, stable solution. This theorem constitutes a cornerstone of early game theory. Von Neumann and Morgenstern argued that this theorem has profound implications for understanding strategic interactions in a wide range of settings. The theorem states that in any two-person zero-sum game, there exists a mixed strategy for each player that guarantees them a certain payoff, regardless of the opponent's strategy. Furthermore, this payoff is the same for both players, meaning that the game has a unique equilibrium. This equilibrium is known as the minimax solution. The minimax theorem provides a powerful tool for analyzing strategic interactions where the interests of the players are diametrically opposed. It shows that even in situations where one player's gain is another player's loss, there exists a rational solution that both players can agree on. This solution is stable in the sense that neither player has an incentive to deviate. However, the minimax theorem also has its limitations. It only applies to two-person zero-sum games, which are a relatively narrow class of games. Many real-world strategic interactions involve more than two players or are not zero-sum. Furthermore, the minimax theorem assumes that players are perfectly rational and have complete information about the game. In reality, players may have limited information or may be influenced by emotions and biases, which can lead to deviations from the minimax. Section 10. towards a dynamic theory. Von Neumann and Morgenstern acknowledge that theory of games and economic behavior is primarily focused on static games, where players make decisions simultaneously and without knowing the actions of other players. They recognize the need for a dynamic theory of games that can account for the evolution of strategic interactions over time. The authors discuss some of the challenges involved in developing a dynamic theory of games. One challenge is to model the learning process, where players update their beliefs and strategies based on their past experiences. Another challenge is to account for the role of time and discounting, where players value payoffs received in the future less, and payoffs received. They suggest that a dynamic theory of games could be based on the concept of repeated games, where players interact repeatedly over time. In repeated games, players have the opportunity to learn about each other's strategies and to punish deviations from cooperative behavior. This can lead to the emergence of stable norms and institutions. While von Neumann and Morgenstern did not fully develop a dynamic theory of games in their 1944 book, the discussion of the topic laid the groundwork for future research. Subsequent work has explored the dynamics of repeated games, evolutionary game theory, and learning in games. These areas of research have provided valuable insights into the evolution of strategic interactions over time and the emergence of cooperation and conflict. Conclusion: theory of games and economic behavior stands as a monumental achievement, fundamentally reshaping the understanding of strategic interactions. As demonstrated through a systematic analysis of the work's claims, the authors successfully established game theory as a rigorous mathematical discipline, providing a framework for analyzing strategic decision-making in diverse contexts. The minimax theorem, the concept of the characteristic function, and the discussion of utility have become cornerstones of game theory and have had a profound influence on economics, political science, and other fields. The detailed examination of the simplified poker game highlighted how game theory can be applied to seemingly complex scenarios and how the best approach is often to randomize ones. However, the work is not without its limitations. The assumptions of rationality, complete information, and zero-sum interactions have been challenged by subsequent research. The complexity and lack of uniqueness of some of the solution concepts, such as the stable set, have also been criticized. Despite these limitations, theory of games and economic behavior remains a seminal work that continues to inspire research and inform policy decisions. Its enduring significance lies in its rigorous mathematical framework, its insightful analysis of strategic interactions, and its profound implications for understanding human behavior. The very concept of modeling the outcome of interactions with mathematics can be seen in nearly every business, governmental, and personal interaction today, and may stand as the book's most impressive and permanent contribution. The book deserves scholarly attention for its profound impact and its continued revelation of the underlying dynamics of strategic decision-making.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.